Fóruma turpinājumā mārketinga un pārdošanas eksperts Grāns Leboffs koncentrēsies uz digitālo mārketingu, proti kā digitāli mainījies klients un kā tam būtu jābūt atspoguļotam kompānijas komunikācijā. Kas jādara, lai digitālais mārketings strādātu efektīvi, proti kā panākt, lai tavu biznesu pamana. Jautājumu tiešām daudz un atbildes jau tūlīt mēs dzirdēsim.
There's a lovely story about JFK, the American president. He was campaigning for the presidency back in 1960, and he was going around America doing all the hustings meetings that you'd expect a political candidate to do. And he was in Chicago. He went to Chicago a number of times. It became a key city in that election. Some of you may know that. He was in Chicago and he was giving a particular speech, and a group of Republicans kept heckling him. They just wouldn't allow him to get his speech out. And he turned around to them and he said this. He said, "Too often we enjoy the comfort of opinion without the discomfort of thought." I think it's one of the greatest put-downs I've ever heard. I have to assume he had that rehearsed and ready to go. I can't believe that that was off the cuff, but I don't know. It may have been. And the reason why I wanted to start with that is because, you know, we've got half an hour together. That's not a lot of time. And what can I achieve in half an hour? I just want to make you think. Really think about how the world has changed, and really think about the way that you do your digital communications in order to attract people to you and to win business, both here and obviously abroad as well. And the world really has changed. We're living through a communication revolution, and that is really one of the problems, because we're living through it. We haven't come out the other side. You know, if you look at the Industrial Revolution, it's easy to look back and see how the world changed, how it urbanized populations, what it did to the planet, because we can reflect. But we're going through this digital revolution, and I spend quite a lot of time in Silicon Valley. And if you talk to anybody in Silicon Valley and you ask them how far through this revolution we are, the answer I normally get is somewhere between 20 or 30%. So I don't know if that scares anybody or whether that makes you really excited, but if you think of all the changes we've experienced in the last 20 years, and we're only about a third of the way through, possibly. So we have to try and make sense of this revolution if we're going to understand what we need to do with our communications in order to be effective online. And so I'm going to distill the communication revolution for you down into one sentence, okay? You're going to be completely underwhelmed by my sentence, by the way, but it's really important. So let me explain. The communication revolution distilled down to one sentence for you. For the first time in history, everybody has a channel. For the first time in history, everybody has a channel. I did warn you it was underwhelming, right? So let me explain the ramifications of that, because it's really, really important. Just go back 15 years. You don't need to go back more than that. If you go back 15 years and you think about how we got our information, almost all the information that we received came from official channels. So if you take the news, for example, where did you get your news from 15 years ago? You'd have put on the radio in the morning. You would have got a newspaper. You'd have watched television. Basically, all the information you got, virtually all the information you got, came from official channels. Right? That is how we learn. In business to business, you may have used trade publications. On your way to work, you may have put on the radio. But the music you were listening to came from media companies. They came from record companies. You may have bought books, but they were put out by publishing companies. Virtually all the information that we consumed came from traditional media channels. And then the web came along. And then more importantly, from this point of view, social media came along. And it changed everything. Because for the first time in history, everybody now has a channel. So you as businesses all have channels. Graham's been talking about websites. Some of you will have blogs. Some of you will have Facebook pages, LinkedIn pages, YouTube channels, Twitter accounts, all of these different things. But these are all channels. And then, of course, individuals have channels as well. Facebook, at some point in the very near future, will report that they now have 2 billion users. They're very close to having 2 billion users. All right? So that is an amazing amount of people on this planet using Facebook, and that's, of course, only one platform. And that doesn't include all the others, the YouTubes, the LinkedIns, the Twitters, just one platform. They happen to be the biggest. So everybody has a channel. Now that has two massive implications for you in business. Okay? The first implication is this. We now live in a world of abundance of information. Anybody here feel information starved? Probably not, right? There's a lot of it. And a lot of it's useless, but there's a lot of it. Why is there so much information? Because everybody's got a channel. The media companies are still putting out information like they always did. In fact, they're putting out more. But now businesses all have channels, which Europe's using, websites, blogs, etc., and individuals as well, right? Now, everything in life has a cause and effect. Nothing exists in a vacuum. What is the direct effect of living in a world of abundance of information? We now live in a world with scarcity of attention. There's a direct correlation. Abundance of information means scarcity of attention. What is the one thing that every business in this room needs to be successful? Attention. You want to go to a market, whether you want to go to America or expand into Europe or go into the Middle East or Africa, or wherever you want to go, if you don't have people's attention in those areas, you've got no chance of selling anything. So attention has become the most precious commodity of business today. And I'll give you an example of that. Just a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, Snapchat, you all know Snapchat, right? Snapchat floated for $24 billion. Now that in itself isn't a big deal. Here's the big deal. 1 week before Snapchat floated, their CEO made this announcement. Snapchat have never made a profit, and we might never, ever make any money. Now that's crazy. 20 years ago, that would have killed a float. You can't float a company and a week before the flotation announce that you've never made any money and you might never make any money. So why did Snapchat float for $24 billion? How did that happen? There's only two conclusions. One is the world's gone mad. You may decide that is the conclusion. I can give you some evidence for that, but that's one conclusion. But there's a second conclusion. What has Snapchat got that's valuable? People's attention. It has the attention of a certain demographic, 500 million people's attention, of a demographic that's hard to get, people between 15 and 25. And that is worth something today in a world where attention is scarce. There's another ramification of everybody owning a channel, though, that you really have to understand. And this, by the way, is where marketing goes wrong, straight away. Because all of you today are in two businesses. Every single one in this room is in two businesses. Whatever it is that you do is one business, but you are now in the media business. You own media channels today, so you are in the media business. Your website is a media channel. Your Facebook page is a media channel. Your LinkedIn page is a media channel. You own media channels today. And it's really important to understand that because marketing has fundamentally changed. You see, you may not have thought about it like this before, but marketing used to be the art of interrupting someone else's audience. So think about it, okay? You know that you want to expand to America. Let's just say it's the United States, okay? And you want to get to manufacturing people in the United States, people in manufacturing operations. And there's a magazine called Manufacturers Monthly. So you think to yourself, you know what, I'm going to take an advert in that magazine and momentarily I'm going to pay to interrupt that group of manufacturers in the United States to get their attention. And it's exactly the same with direct mail, and it's exactly the same with radio advertising and television advertising. Marketing used to be the art of interrupting someone else's audience. Here's the thing. Your major route to market today is digital. Your website doesn't have an audience. You can go away today and decide, you know what, I need a Facebook page. So you put up a beautiful Facebook page, great images, great content, fantastic. It has no audience. You can go and record a load of video and put it on your YouTube channel. It has no audience. Marketing today is no longer the art of interrupting someone else's audience. It's building your audience and then retaining it. And that is the discipline of media. That's what media companies do, and that's what you need to do today if you want really effective marketing. You need to build that audience and then retain it. It is a different discipline. And by the way, that's when then people start to talk about content marketing. I hate that phrase. If I ruled the world, that phrase would be banned. Okay? And I'll explain why. Because when people talk about content marketing, it makes content sound like a virtue. And people must have told you, you must have video, Oh, you must have articles, you must have blogs, you must have this, you must have content. People are right. You do need to have content. But it's not a virtue, it's an outcome. Because what is the currency of media? Content. I come from the UK. One of our biggest exports in the world is the BBC. You've all heard of it, right? The British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC. The BBC is widely respected throughout the world. But you know what the BBC is? It's just a set of cables with a license to broadcast. That's all it is. Do you know what makes the BBC great? The content it puts on the channel. What's your website? Dead space on a thing called the internet. What's your LinkedIn page? Dead space on the biggest business networking platform in the world. What's your YouTube channel? Dead space on the biggest video network in the world. What makes those things good or not? The content you put on them. Content is the currency of media, but it's an outcome. It's really important to understand that. Okay, the other consequence of everybody having a channel, okay? I said, how did you get your news 15 years ago? You would have got it from newspapers, radio, television, from official channels. What is the biggest news platform in the world today? Might explain a few things, by the way. Biggest platform in the world today for news? Facebook. Fact. More people get their news from Facebook on the planet today than any other platform, which is kind of scary, but true. Okay? How is information disseminated online? Well, clearly, someone has to publish it or broadcast it. If I upload an article to Facebook, that is electronic publishing, isn't it? I put an article on Facebook, right? If I upload a podcast, I don't call it broadcasting, by the way. I call it narrowcasting. Because I'm not broadcasting to millions of people, but I'm broadcasting to my network, which in the big scheme of things is smaller, right? It's not millions, but it's narrowcasting. But how does it spread? What is the currency of digital? Social sharing. That is the currency of digital. More information today is disseminated via social sharing than publishing or broadcast. And that is really, really key to understanding how to make your marketing work. Because, and this is very, very important, in the old days when you used to interrupt people with marketing, marketing used to be the art of interrupting someone else's audience, right? So in the old days of interrupting people, you had your customers who you wanted to reach, and you had the channels which you used to reach them. So I gave you an example earlier on. If you wanted to export to America, and you decided that manufacturers was your audience, then you may have decided to use Manufacturing Today magazine to take an advert in. So your advert was the channel, right? The magazine was the channel, and it went to the end user, the manufacturers that you wanted to use your products or services. Yeah, makes sense to everybody. Here's what's happened. The customer is the channel. They've merged. Your prospects and customers are your best channel to market, because the number one way information is disseminated today is social sharing. It completely changes everything. So, in a world where everybody's got a channel, in a world where attention has become really scarce and the most precious resource of business, and in a world where channels are not separate from customers, your customers are the channel, how do you make that work? So we didn't have a lot of time today, and I've got more time with some of you in the workshop this afternoon, but I want to give you 3 rules of marketing. 3 rules that if you don't keep to, your online marketing will not work. It will not work, all right? And they are not rules that you would find in any classic book on marketing, because they're new, because marketing's changed. So rule number 1, marketing is no longer a means to an end, it is an end in itself. I'll say that again. Marketing is no longer a means to an end, marketing is an end in itself. In other words, marketing has become a product in its own right. And what I mean by that is simply this. Your marketing has to give value to your audience regardless of whether a transaction is going to take place. It's irrelevant whether they're going to buy something or not. It has to give them value anyway. You see, a lot of traditional marketing didn't do that. You'd often receive a direct mail through your door, and the direct mail would give you a special offer. Buy now, and this is the special offer. But if you weren't in the market to buy whatever it is they were offering, it had no value to you, because you're not in the market. The special offer is irrelevant, so you just throw it away. Now that's okay if your marketing is about interrupting someone in the moment. But if you're trying to build an audience in your digital channels and then retain it, if all your website does is say, buy from me now, buy from me now, buy from me now, no one's going to come back. There's no added value. Your marketing has to give value beyond the transaction. All right, so I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. All right, and for brevity, for time, I'm going to use a really easy example. I'm going to use me. If you go to my website, stickymarketing.com, okay, if you go to that website, there are hundreds of videos on that website. Hundreds. There are loads of articles. There are loads of downloads. You don't need to be in the market to hire a speaker or a consultant on marketing to get value out of that site. In fact, nowhere on that site will it tell you to buy from me. Not once. Right? All of those videos, all of those articles are there to give people value regardless of whether they're in the market for my products or services right now. Makes no difference. But if you go onto that website and you get value out of it, there's a good chance you'll come back. You might even subscribe to the website, in which case you start to become part of my community. And what's the most precious thing in the world today that everybody needs to be successful? Attention. I've got your attention. And once I've got your attention, even if in 2 years' time is when you need a speaker on marketing or a consultant on marketing, if you're going onto my website every month, every 6 weeks, every 8 weeks, when you're ready to buy, will I be in your buying set? Sure. Will I get the deal? Will I get the job? Maybe not. But I will be in the buying set. So if you want to export, you have to be very focused and say, where do I want to export? What are the countries, the continents, the places I want to export? Who's my audience? How can I give them value beyond the transaction? How can I engage them so I get their attention? Here's the other thing that happens. When someone goes on my website and they watch the videos and they like them, they share them. And who are the people that get most of my additional viewers to the website? The customers, right? The people that watch the videos. Because today, your customer is the channel. Your prospect is the channel. More traffic comes to my site from social sharing, from people sharing my content, than it comes in any other way. So the more value you give to people, because if all my website did was say, buy from me, I'm really good, you're not going to share that with anyone. Even if you respond to it, you're not going to share it. But if there's inherent value, it will spread. So the rule number one is this: marketing has to give value in its own right. It doesn't mean you can't have a call to action on it. You can. It doesn't mean you can't have a special offer. You can. But there has to be inherent value in it beyond those things. Otherwise, it's not shareable, and you're not going to build an audience in that way. So that's rule number one. Rule number two is this: marketing is no longer about your products and services. I'll say it again. Marketing is no longer about your products and services. It's about people. Your marketing has to be about people. And there are two very, very good reasons for that. The first one is this. Has everybody heard of the USP? In English it's called the USP, the unique selling proposition, right? The unique selling proposition. In other words, what is the unique thing that you offer which will attract customers to you? Okay? Now the USP is known globally around the world. It was invented in 1950s America. It was originally codified, written down by a gentleman called Rosser Reeves in a book called Reality in Advertising. He wrote that book in 1961. And it was specifically for television advertising. It was specifically for television advertising, because if you were going to advertise on American television in the 1950s to 30 million people watching I Love Lucy, you might have to have something unique and different to say so you attract people to you. That was the idea. For some reason, which I don't understand, it's been widely adopted by everybody today, so everybody tries to think about their USP. Now, I don't know if anybody in this room has ever struggled with a USP or unique selling proposition, but if any of you have struggled with it, I'm going to help all of you at once now. It's like a magic trick. I'm going to help everybody with their USP all in one go, even though you're all from different companies. Okay, you ready for this? You don't have one. You don't have one. Because a USP was always about what you did. And it's very, very unlikely today that in what you do, you're going to be that different from anybody else. Okay? You're going to be that different from anybody else. If you're in services, you don't have a USP. because services are intangible, and there is nothing that you can promise that can't be copied by a competitor. I'm not saying, by the way, you can't come up with something new. You can. You absolutely can innovate, and you should innovate. But if it's any good, your competitor will copy it real fast. Even in products, it's unlikely you'll have a USP for very long. I'll just give you one example. Apple invented the iPad. They invented the iPad. They didn't invent the tablet computer, but they did invent the iPad. There'd never been a tablet that worked like it. And they patented everything they could about that iPad. 24 weeks after the iPad was released in April 2010, Samsung launched the Galaxy Tab. Right, a similar product, a competing product. In other words, Apple had a USP on a brand new innovation for 24 weeks. Right? Now, the fact that you don't have a USP doesn't mean you can't differentiate. You absolutely can. But this is really important. You don't differentiate by what you do. You differentiate by who you do it for, and therefore how you do it. You differentiate by who you do it for, and if you understand who you do it for, you can create a how, an experience for that audience that's fantastic. You know why most content marketing doesn't work? Because it's rubbish, because it's bland, because it's boring, because it's useless. Because what most people do with their content is they try and address the biggest audience they can. And in addressing that massive audience, they actually address no one. It's just dull and it's boring. If you want to export, you have to decide which sector am I exporting to? Which countries am I exporting to? Who is my audience? And if you can really understand who your audience is, you can create a how that's amazing for that audience. And that is how you differentiate. You differentiate by the experience, by how you do something, because of who you do it for, not what you actually do. And I'm just going to give you one really easy example of this. Think of the news. Can you think of anything more commoditized than the news? There was a terrorist attack in London last Saturday night. You'll all know that. That's the news. It happened, right? Once you know it happened, it happened. There's a general election in Britain today. Tomorrow morning we're going to wake up possibly with a new Prime Minister, maybe not. But that's the news. Whatever the result is in the morning will be the news. Right? In the Middle East, there's problems with Qatar at the moment, right? And some of the other Arab states in the Middle East. That's the news. So how do you make money out the news? You don't make money out the news by telling people what happened. Because once I know it happened, I'm not interested. You make money out the news by understanding who your audience is and then creating a how for that audience. So I'm sure in Latvia you will have some left-leaning newspapers. All right? And they may alienate vast quantities of the population who don't have the same political views. But they will put a spin on the news that appeals to those people on the left of politics. You will have people on the right of politics. And those right-wing newspapers will put a different spin on the news for those people. They don't differentiate by what they do, they differentiate by how they do it and who they do it for. If you want to be successful exporting, really think about the countries, the audience you want to go to, and create a how that's fantastic for them. But if you start to do that, and you really understand your differentiation is your how and your who, then your marketing needs to be about people. That's all about people. And it has to relate to people. So marketing is not about products and services, it's about people. There's a second reason. Your customer today is the channel. Your most powerful route to market is social sharing. Right? If you want people to share, and Graham alluded to this in his presentation actually, right? It has to be about them. Graham said the websites has to be about them. The golden rule in marketing is this: make your customer the hero. Make your customer the hero. Make it about them. There was a fantastic campaign in America. JetBlue, a lot of you will know JetBlue. They're a budget airline, right? A cheap budget airline that mainly fly in America. They do a few flights outside, but mainly in America. They did the most amazing campaign a couple of years ago, which was this: if you could nominate one person for a free flight, who would it be and why? And if you nominated someone and they got chosen, they would get a free flight and they would tell their story. You can go on YouTube and watch them. There are two amazing videos, had tens of millions of hits. One of them was a gentleman who was a struggling artist. And his dream was to have his artwork exhibited in New York. So he got nominated and he won. And JetBlue do a video of him leaving his house, going on the JetBlue aeroplane, flying to New York, and seeing his reaction to his artwork exhibited in New York for the first time ever. It's highly emotional, it's highly charged. It doesn't have that much to do with JetBlue, although they did the flight. But who's the hero in that video? Not JetBlue, the artist. And it's been shared loads and loads of times. But you know what? If you want to pick a flight to go somewhere in America, JetBlue are in your buying set now, right? Yeah? Make your customer the hero. The other story, it's fantastic, was a woman who'd had a tragic accident and she'd become wheelchair bound. And she hadn't been very many places since her accident. And she hadn't seen her sister who lived the other side of America. And JetBlue flew her with all the special equipment she needed. She was a paraplegic. And took her over, and you see her seeing her sister for the first time in a couple of years. Again, highly charged, highly emotional, but they're the heroes of that video, not JetBlue. Make your customer the hero, but that means your marketing has to be about people, not about products and services. So that's rule number 2. And rule number 3 is this. Marketing is no longer about winning customers. And if I stop there, I don't sound very clever, right? I'll finish it off. Marketing is no longer about winning customers, it's about building communities. Now, I told you earlier on in my presentation that marketing's fundamentally changed. It's not about interrupting someone else's audience, it's now building your own and retaining it. When you think about an audience, you should think of it in terms of a community. Because whether you want to go to lawyers in Germany, or recruitment companies in France, or manufacturers in America, they are communities. People know each other in those areas, in those sectors, in those industries. So you want to build community. That's what you're looking to do. How do you build community? Well, the first thing you need to do is what I've already said. Make sure you give value in all your marketing. It's not transactional. And make your customer the hero. Make it about people and really understand who the community is that you're marketing to. So that's the first way of building a community. But the second way is this. Those communities already exist. The communities already exist. Leverage them. Who are the influencers in those communities? Who are the big companies with the eyeballs of your prospects in those communities? I've told you already, the most precious thing in the world today is people's attention. Who's already got your prospects and customers' attention in those communities that you could work with? Could you do a joint webinar with them? Could you do a joint seminar with them? Here's a really nice tactic which I use a lot. Could you interview them? Could you interview them? In that way you're leveraging the eyeballs of that community. So I'll leave you with one example of what I'm talking about. It's a far-fetched example, but I'll give you the example. Right? I like football. I love football. It's one of my hobbies. Okay? So let's pretend I wanted to set up a global website called footballexpert.com. And it's all about me and all my expertise on football. I don't have any, by the way, but all my expertise on football. Okay? I'll tell you how I'd start. I'd spend the next 6 or 9 months of my life doing nothing but flying around all the European clubs, hanging out at the training grounds. And all I'd be looking to do is get an interview with a couple of star players or a couple of big managers. I only need to get lucky 2 or 3 times. So let's just pretend I hang out in Manchester in the north of England and I manage to get an interview with Pep Guardiola, the manager of Manchester City. Okay? And then I hang out at Barcelona for ages, and eventually after 3 months I get one interview with Messi. Just as an example. Right? So now on my footballexpert.com, there's me interviewing Messi, only for 1 minute, and there's me interviewing Pep Guardiola. Do I look like an expert? Yeah. Do I look credible? Absolutely. And you know what I'm going to do next? I'll tell you what I'm going to do next. Are there fan forums? Are there magazine sites? Are there forums on Facebook and other places of people that be interested in what Messi has to say? Sure. So now I'm going to post up, want to know what Messi thinks of the future of football? Click on this link. And the link goes back to my website. Do you think people will click on that link? And when they get on that link and there's an interview with me and Messi, and then there's an interview with me and Pep Guardiola, do you think if I have a subscribe button, some people might subscribe to my newsletter? Sure. And once I've interviewed Messi, and I've interviewed Pep Guardiola, will it be easier to get interviews with other stars and other managers? Sure, it just becomes a vicious circle, right? it won't take long before I look really credible and I've built an audience, and it's nothing to do with me. I'm leveraging the community. If you want to build a community, leverage the community. If you want to export, understand the market in America of manufacturers. Who are the big players? Who are the influencers? Who are the big companies? Who can I interview? Who can I work with? So Isaac Newton called it standing on the shoulders of giants. Stand on the shoulders of others and build your community. If you can add value in all of your marketing, if you can make sure that your marketing is about people and make your customer the hero, and if you can leverage the eyeballs of people that have already got the attention of your community and leverage that, you will be able to export and be successful. You know, JFK won the election in 1960, and in 1961 he gave probably the most famous inauguration address of all time of any American president. He promised man on the moon and lots of other things like that. And during that address, in order that presentation, he said this. He said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." If you want really successful marketing today, don't ask what your marketing can do for you. Ask what your marketing can do for your customer. Create marketing that gives them value, that makes them the hero, that builds community, and you will be successful. Thank you very much.